वासुदेवाय ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत् शृण्वतां स्वकतः कृष्ण पुण्यश्रवणकीर्तनः हृदयन्तस्थो हि अभद्राणि विदुनोति श्रुतिसताम् नष्टप्रायेषु अभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवते उत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 16, verses 3 and 4. Text 3. अथाप्य उदार श्रवशाः प्रतो हरेः कलावतारस्य कथामृतादृतः यतोपदेशं मुनिभिः प्रचोदितः अस्लयान् कर्माणि व्यायं वितन्महि. Translation. Although we are unable to glorify you adequately, we nonetheless have a transcendental taste for glorifying your activities. We shall try to glorify you according to the instructions received from authoritative sages and scholars. Whatever we speak, however, is always inadequate and very insignificant. Dear King, because you are a direct incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, all your activities are liberal and ever laudable. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. However expert one may be, he can never describe the glories of the Lord adequately. Nonetheless, those engaged in glorifying the activities of the Lord should try to do so as far as possible. Such an attempt will please the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Lord Chaitanya has advised all his followers to go everywhere and preach the message of the Lord Krishna. Since this message is essentially Bhagavad Gita, the preacher's duty is to study Bhagavad Gita as it is understood by disciplic succession and explained by great sages and learned devotees. One should speak to the general populace in accordance with one's Siddhas, Sadhu, Guru, and Shastras. This simple process is the easiest method by which one can glorify the Lord. Devotional service, however, is the real method, for by devotional service one can satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead with just a few words. Without devotional service, volumes of books cannot satisfy the Lord. Even though preachers of the Krishna consciousness movement may be unable to describe the glories of the Lord, they can nonetheless go everywhere and request people to chant Hare Krishna. Text 4. Esha dharma bhratam shreshto lokam dharmenuvartayan kopta cha dharma setunam shashta tat paripantinam. Translation. This king, Maharaj Prithu, is the best amongst those who are following religious principles. As such, he will engage everyone in the pursuit of religious principles and give those principles all protection. He will also be a great chastiser to the irreligious and atheistic. Purport. The duty of the king or the head of the government is described very nicely in this verse. It is the duty of the governmental head to see that people strictly follow a religious life. A king should also be strict in chastising the atheist. In other words, an atheist or godless government should never be supported by a king or governmental chief. That is the test of good government. In the name of secular government, the king or governmental head remains neutral and allows people to engage in all sorts of religious activities. In such a state, people cannot be happy despite all economic development. However, in this age of Kali, there are no pious kings. Instead, rogues and thieves are elected to head the government. But how can the people be happy without religion and God consciousness? The rogues exact taxes from the citizens, for their own sense enjoyment. And in the future, the people will be so much harassed that, according to Srimad Bhagavatam, they will flee from their homes and country and take shelter in the forest. However, in Kali Yuga, democratic government can be captured by Krishna conscious people. If this can be done, the general populace can be made very happy. नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमति भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी इति नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वती देवी गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे. I like to seek blessings from all the assembled Vaishnavas and thank you for giving me an opportunity to purify myself. Please forgive me for any shortcomings. I have taken, uh, I have heard lecture from Srila Prabhupada and from other devotees and just summarized few points regarding these two verses. We, the human beings, how much ever we are in scholars, either in the field of literatures or in any other field, still we will not be able to glorify Krishna, the Supreme, and never we will be. This is because as we are incomplete, our senses are limited. Not only they are limited, in addition to that, they are imperfect. And how can one glorify the activity of the Supreme Absolute Truth with these limitations? Here, Prabhupada is giving us a pathway how, by at least, one can engage in glorifying the Lord by spreading the Lord's mission through disciplic succession, through Sadhu Guru Shastra. This is one of the simplest way of glorifying the Lord, as well as making general populace awareness of Krishna consciousness. Even if a Krishna conscious person is not in a position to glorify the Lord, the least he can do is to ask to chant the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. So in the Kali Yuga, this is one of the best way to glorify the Supreme Personality of Godhead by engaging in chanting of the Mahamantra. As we have seen in the previous chapter, the great sages were trying to explain King Vena the way in which he and his subjects can be happy by pleasing the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and what benefits if he would get by ruling his kingdom as Krishna consciousness, the importance of following the religious path. And they were trying to give the responsibility of the king in educating the king Vena what should be the qualities in him. Number one would have been the facilitation, as we have seen in the text 4:14-16, to facilitate the spiritual elevation among the subjects. Second one is prevention, preventing the degradation by protecting from the miscreants and from the atheists who will be the cause for the havoc in the society, and engaging everyone in varnashram occupational duties to worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Finally, satisfying the Supreme Personality of Godhead by engaging and directing the citizens to perform yajnas. Now, here in this chapter, we see King Prithu is perfectly exemplifies all those qualities described by the sages when they were trying to educate King Vena. The glorification of King Prithu is done here, and he is described best among those who follow the religious principles and who gives protection to the religious principle and chastise the atheist. These are the perfect qualities of Rajya Rishi who rules the kingdom. If the king does not protect religious dharma, then there will be consequences from the material nature. A king is just an administrator here. A perfect leader should possess all these qualities to guide the entire kingdom in such a way that harmony and peace persist among the population with the practice of religious dharma. As we know, the four Purusharthas are Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha. The common mundane man who engages in fulfillment of his Kama, that is desires, and for to do so he requires Artha, the wealth, and that Artha should be earned through following Dharma, religious, that is religious by following do's and don'ts as mentioned in Vedas. This is the way a man should lead his life. Even when a man claims he is free to do whatever he wants, in fact, actually, he is not free. He can do what he wants, but he is supposed to act within the laws of the government and within the laws of nature. Anybody who says that they won't abide by the laws, they are subjected to punishment for breaking laws of the government, or by law, nature puts that individual into a situation one has to suffer for the action. In this way, when a man is tired of chasing his desires life after life and comes to conclusion that there is no end for this and sees no happiness in fulfilling these desires and thus takes the path to moksha, and finally he can attain liberation. Artha and Kama in this material world is temporary, to be perceived as per dharma in order to get liberated from the material world. This is how the Creator has set up the social society. Artha and Kama are necessities which should be pursued by dharma as per the scriptures Varnashrama Dharma. Every living entity has to undergo self realization by following dharmic principle at one point. We cannot achieve self realization by just sitting and meditating. In reality, that is not possible, as he has to live in the midst of the society and has to perform actions, and those actions should be performed by knowing, following dharmic rules designed by the Supreme Lord and following do's and don'ts. That is why it is said, Dharmastu Shakshat Bhagavata Pranitam. If the soul has to progress, self restraint is an essential and internal quality that is required, not only here, even in the spiritual world. In the spiritual world, self restraint comes out of love. We don't feel we are restraining when we are in love. We automatically do what pleases the person. Devotion service is this love of God, and I will align myself to give pleasure to Krishna, the object of love. I will dovetail all my activities in such a way that gives pleasure to the Lord. To understand self realization means not simply understanding I am soul and not this body. One has to have Divya Gyan of Krishna, the scheme of Krishna, and surrender to his scheme. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 1866, Sarva Dharmanam Parityajya Mam Ekam Sharanam Vraja. The whole universe is set in such a way that where living entities can enjoy by fulfilling their desires by following Varnashrama Dharma and ultimately attain moksha. This society set by the Lord is equally important to be led and directed by the kings who are in favor of religious path, who understands that irreligion leads to disturbance of the society and therefore chastise the non-follower of dharma and the atheist in order to maintain harmony, peace and happy among the subjects. We have many examples of such great Raja Rishis in the history, and few to name: King Janaka, Prahlad Maharaj, Ambarish Maharaj, Parikshit Maharaj. The current leaders, if they follow the footsteps of these great Rajrishis in maintaining the Dharma, then it is possible to have peace and could avoid war taking place. So I end my